What's up, guys? Hope you're having a great one. I was refilling my recycled water for my washout station, and it's pretty basic and low tech, but it's been working really well for me. So I thought I'd share, as maybe it can give you guys some ideas and help you as well. Now, I made some minor adjustments in setting up here at my new shop, but it's basically the same system I used for a number of years when working on my home studio. Now, one of the many things I love about this system is that it's totally self-contained. I'm not relying on any fresh water supply, nor drain or sewer. It's flexible in that I can use it for a number of different purposes and move it around anywhere I need in the shop, including outside. Now, the whole thing's super easy to use, it's easy on the back, and it's cost effective. Now, I think this kind of setup would work great for any home studio or small or even medium-sized shop setup, where you've got a fair amount of wet cleanup on the regular. Let's dive in. All right, there's three main components to the system: the water source, the washout basin, and the gray water sediment collection. I've actually taken this down from where it's normally stored and moved a couple things around to demonstrate the portability. And at the end of this video, I'll move those back to where they normally sit so you can get a good idea of the functioning setup. Now, if you're already set up on water source and don't plan to change that in the future, then I'd suggest skipping ahead to the washout basin section of this video. But if you're interested in alternative water sources, follow along. Now, I'm here in California, and it's no secret that we have water supply challenges. Now, years ago, when the bad drought hit, I switched over and adopted a system that took advantage of recycled water. I still used and continue to use fresh water for all my batches or anything that touches concrete, but for cleanup, I use recycled water almost exclusively. It was the right thing to do then, and it's still the right thing to do now, even though we're through the drought, for at least for the time being. I'm fortunate enough to be very close to a recycled water supply facility, and I can pick up as much as I need anytime I need it. Now, another option here is rainwater, but obviously you'd need to have enough rainwater and efficient collection to have a decent enough supply for your cleanup purposes. Now, I started out with drums, but if you have the means and the space, I'd suggest going straight to 275-gallon water totes. For even mild use, you'll go through a 55-gallon drum of water in no time, and you'll just end up wasting a bunch of time refilling. Even if you don't have a forklift to load and unload a full tote of water, you're gonna need a pump anyways to distribute the water, and with the right setup, that pump system can be easily used to transfer the water from the tote that's, say, in your truck to a second tote in a fixed location in your shop. More about that in a bit. Now, don't worry about buying these new. You can easily source these used in really good shape off of Craigslist for under 100 bucks, sometimes even for free. You'll often find single-use food grade that might have a little bit of residue in them, but are in otherwise perfect condition. Now, look for totes that are clean, leak-free. You're gonna want the top cap, so that should be 6 inches, and a working spigot, probably 2 inches at the bottom, and a cage that's in good shape. Now, these spigots come in different sizes and styles, so some are butterfly style, like this one here. Others are a ball valve. And that's not super relevant for our purposes. As long as it's leak-free and functions properly, that can be useful in draining the tank quickly when needed. Now, for a couple of these, 100 to 200 bucks max. All right, now that we have a water container, we're gonna need to distribute the water in some way, and this is where a good water pump comes into play. Now, you're looking for something that typically is used for wells, lawn sprinklers, water transfer, things like that, and has a good transfer rate. I have this 1 horsepower stainless steel pump from Wayne, and it's been bomber. Put tons of pressure out, and I've had no issues with it other than the self-inflicted kind. Just make sure you have it connected to a solid electrical source, because these things will have a decent draw. Now, you can, of course, source them elsewhere, like Harbor Freight, things like that. Just make sure that you're getting something that'll last and puts out good PSI. A decent pump like this will be anywhere from 100 to 300 bucks. All right, now you're gonna need a few extra things for this type of setup to work and not be a hassle for our intended purpose. Obviously, you'll need some kind of piping or hose for the pump to draw water out of the tote. Now, you could use PVC pipe for this, but I opted for this flexible hose, and I'm so glad that I did. Now, the key here is that you need a hose that's designed for suction for this purpose and won't collapse under pressure. Now, you can find these all over Amazon or your local big box or hardware store. Just make sure you're getting something designed for this purpose, or you'll likely damage your pump. Now, the benefit to going with a flexible hose like this is flexibility and portability. I can use it for transferring water from different sources, and it's much more forgiving when I'm moving these totes around, like when I'm refilling it, for example. Now, this is also exactly what you need if you want to do what I suggested earlier and use the pump to transfer water from the tote that's, say, on your truck to a tote that's stationary in your shop. Rigid piping system wouldn't be all that practical for this purpose. Now, this hose is 20 feet long, so it provides plenty of reach, and I just feed most of it into the tote and let it rest in the bottom when I'm not using it for anything else. A hose like this will run anywhere from 30 to 50 bucks. All right, now you're also gonna want a foot valve that goes on the end of the hose that rests inside the water tote. Now this does two things. First, it's got this filter on it that keeps sediment and debris out of the hose and out of the pump. Second, it also acts like a one-way valve that closes when there's no suction. Now that's important, as every pump needs to be primed to initiate suction. The foot valve will close and therefore retain that prime even when the pump is not on or in use for extended periods of time. That's super handy because it'd be a real pain in the butt to have to prime the pump every time you use it. Foot valve solves that problem. A good one like this, 15 to 20 bucks. Okay, the transfer hose and foot valve handle getting the water from the water tote to the pump. Now for output, you're also gonna need a couple things as well. Now, rather than feeding a hose directly from the output of the pump, you'll see I've got this teed off here. Now one leg of the tee goes to my hose and sprayer, which is just this flexible hose and basic adjustable sprayer. And then the other leg of the tee goes to this pressure relief valve. And the concept here is that in normal use, we'll want to be able to turn the pump on and just leave it while not always spraying water or having it flow freely. So we might spray, then clean something up, walk away, etc. And we don't want to have to constantly turn the pump on and off just for this purpose. Now, without a pressure relief valve, leaving the pump on just like this can cause pressure to build and damage to the pump. With a pressure relief leg like this, we can set the desired PSI on this adjustable valve. I usually set it to the max the pump will handle, and then when that's reached, this valve will open, essentially relieving the pressure and discharging the water through that opening. All right, now the clever part about this is I have a hose on that leg that simply returns the water back to the tote. So even if I turn the pump on and just leave it, like we have it right now, the valve will open and the water will simply recirculate in the system. Now when needed, I can also turn the pressure on this valve way down when I know I want to use the pump to quickly transfer a lot of water through this relief leg. Like in that instance where I want to transfer it from one tote to another. Now, if I turn it all the way down, that will pretty much open the pump up immediately, allowing the maximum flow and the fastest transfer of water. So transferring a full tank of water from one tote to another with this method typically takes 5 to 7 minutes. Now, I'll also do this when I'm transferring the cleaner gray water from one stage to the next in the gray water drums. I'll take the flexible suction hose out of the water tote and place it in the first drum down to the point where the water is still clean. And then I'll take the relief leg hose and place that in the second drum. Turn the pump on, and in a few seconds, I've transferred the cleaner gray water from stage 1 to stage 2. More about that in the gray water section. All right, this is a simple, elegant solution that makes this system super easy to use. Almost foolproof, while safeguarding and protecting your pump from damage. Hose and sprayer is gonna run you about 30 to 40 bucks. The relief valve and gauge, another 40 bucks. And the PVC bits and the bib, another 20 bucks. Now, as a self-contained water source, it does require a few extra components to be effective for our use, but in my opinion, it's so worth it. It's simple, reliable, cost-effective solution, performs extremely well, it's flexible and portable, and using recycled water does some good things for the environment too. All right, now that we have a water source, let's talk about the washout basin. So for obvious reasons, I've found a bathtub to be extremely effective for this purpose. Again, nothing fancy here. You can find used bathtubs dirt cheap and sometimes even free on Craigslist for people looking to get rid of them, especially these heavy cast iron variety, which are perfect for our purpose. This one happens to be the original tub I pulled out of my own house. Now, it's probably obvious, but one of the keys here is to set this up to a comfortable working height. I would say even just a bit higher than a normal kitchen sink, maybe 40 inches, or even higher if you're taller. Now, this not only helps keep the water off me, but that also makes it that much easier to reach to the bottom of the tub because it's deeper. So a bathtub like this, free to a couple $100. Now, in my home studio, I had this set up in a fixed location on nothing more than cinder blocks. Now, keep in mind, you're gonna wanna get access underneath, not only for your feet, but also for drainage, and we're gonna talk about that in a second. Here, I wanted something more flexible, so I decided to set it up on this shallow pallet racking, and this is working out awesome. 24 inches deep, 7 feet tall, with 6-foot load beams. Absolutely perfect size for this space. Now, to contain the water, I was gonna do something fancy like fiberglass panels against this wall, but it turns out using this tarp, almost like a shower curtain, is even better. Super easy, flexible, dirt cheap, contains the water just fine when I'm washing something off in the tub. I attached some decent locking swivel casters to the bottom, and now I can roll and move this anywhere I want in my shop easily, even outside if I need to. Of course, it's plenty strong and stable on pallet racking, and the extra bonus is it was super easy to adjust and dial in the exact height that I wanted. Now again, you don't need pallet racking to take advantage of a system like this that incorporates a bathtub. Basic cinder blocks or even wood framing will raise it to a comfortable working height with minimal investment. I really like the pallet racking though for all the reasons I mentioned above, and it can be used with other racking components down the road if needed. So decent set of used pallet racking like this will run you about 300 bucks. Casters, another 50 bucks. Okay, for drainage, again, it's super simple. I just have another deck underneath the one that's supporting the bathtub, and I just use one of these plastic mixing tubs to collect the drain water. As it fills, I dispose of the clean gray water in the sewer, and I pour the gray water in the first of those 55-gallon drums. More on that in a second. Now, the obvious downside to this is it does require monitoring and manual work to make sure that the drain water doesn't overflow, and that's actually happened to me recently. So to combat that, another simple solution is to incorporate a sump pump. And I actually have one that I'll add soon. And the idea is simple. As the water rises, eventually the float will activate the sump pump, and that'll discharge water via a hose. So my plan is to also run that hose to the first of those 55-gallon drums. Now I'll report back on that as soon as I have it all set up, but if it works as expected, this should make the system fully automated, requiring zero monitoring and manual effort. So a plastic mix tub like that's 20 bucks, and a decent sump pump's gonna be anywhere from 100 to 200 bucks. Okay, the final component of the system is handling sediment and gray water. Sticking with the theme, this component is also low tech, something I picked up from Buddy Rhodes years ago, and that is this series of 55-gallon drums that rely on gravity for filtering sediment. The idea is simple. The heaviest gray water goes into drum number 1. As it fills, the sediment will sink to the bottom and the clean water will rise to the top. Once it rises to the top, that cleaner water gets transferred to drum number 2. The same happens in this drum, only the water at the top is much cleaner than it was in drum number 1. That water gets transferred to drum number 3. And when it reaches the top there, it's generally clean enough to dispose of in the sewer. Now the water in this drum could also be treated first for stable pH and all that if appropriate. Super basic, works extremely well, and for the most part environmentally friendly. 3 55-gallon drums off of Craigslist, 20 to 25 bucks a piece, 60 to 75 bucks. All right, now one thing I've changed is that I no longer dump heavier sediment and waste into drum number 1. By heavier sediment, I'm talking about leftover concrete mix either from the mixer, the bucket, or tools. Instead, I now follow a tip I picked up from Cody Carpenter, and I just dump that into one of these kiddie pools. Now the problem with dumping it into the drum is that it's just too deep to manage effectively. And what I was finding is way too much buildup, and with it constantly being mixed with water, it wouldn't really set up and cure hard enough to be able to easily be disposed. It was basically perpetual sludge. That created a lot of unnecessary work and product to process the sludge into something solid that I could actually get rid of. Now I just put the heavy stuff in these kiddie pools, tilt it so that the water drains from the heavy stuff and it cures solid much faster. Once cured, I just throw that directly in the dumpster and then pour the gray water into drum number 1. This is way simpler and easier than what I was doing before. Kiddie pool, run you 15 bucks. All right guys, I hope that was helpful. Hopefully you can see that once you break it down, it's actually really straightforward to set up a self-contained, super functional washout station that won't break the bank. You can get into something like this anywhere from 900 to 1500 bucks. A worthwhile investment in my opinion to keep things clean and organized. It'll save your back and maybe do something good for the environment as well. Keep taking those creations to the next level, and I'll see you in the next one.